number 2 follows up on the first issue's cliffhanger by exploring what Mystique has been planning, how her plans have manifested, and what it means for Moira, Professor X, Magneto, and the rest of Krakoa. Mystique is making a serious play to upend the power dynamics in the mutant nation in ways that will have major ramifications for the X-Men line moving forward. Today I'll answer, what are the updates on Krakoa's Quiet Council and what do they mean? The secret primary antagonist hiding in plain sight of this whole story, and what comes next for Professor X and Magneto, plus theories and predictions for what's to come here in the end of the Hickman era of X-Men. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. You can find full X-Men and comic book reading orders over on comicbookherald.com with links in the show notes. Spoilers for Discuss Comics will follow. Writer Jonathan Hickman, artist Stefano Caselli, colors by David Curiel, letters by Joe Sabino. So, Inferno number 1 ended with the appreciated revelation that Mystique had already resurrected Destiny, despite Moira's adamant pleas with Magneto and Professor X to prevent such a scenario from ever occurring. As theorized, Mystique pretended to be Mags to get a Cerebro helmet, and pretended to be Charlie to get Destiny DNA from Mr. Sinister. We've seen these things play out over the course of Trial of Magneto as well as Inferno number 1. Given Mystique's shape-shifting abilities in her goals to resurrect Destiny, and better yet, take down Eric and Charles while she's at it, I don't exactly take too much credit in seeing this coming. Destiny's had better predictions, that's all I'm saying. Nonetheless, it's necessary work Hickman does here in his patented rewind plotting, particularly the beats that clearly show Mr. Sinister is onto Mystique's game and not so easily tricked. This isn't necessarily as shocking as his newly developed handlebar mustache, but still, it leaves the door open for even greater sinister schemes, which is always a fun thing. The newer development in this issue is that Mystique pretended to be Chuckwagon with the Five, then tricked Hope into using Cerebro to restore Destiny. It's a clever bit of manipulation rather than going with the Five actually full-on revolting against Professor X's direction, even though misgivings have been building here across the dawn and the reign of X. You could still play the story that Hope knew what Mystique was up to and just played along if you wanted to, and it would align with where she's been heading as a character, especially in an event like Trial of Magneto. So Mystique helped Destiny to a body that's, as she says, the age she was when they first met, and the wives' reunion is sped up to move from tumultuous process of resurrection and reacquaintance to scheming for where we are now in Inferno. This is one of the bigger holes for me, as I think the economy of story is effective within the confines of Inferno, but it's hard not to look back on Hickman's X-Men run and think, why couldn't this have been the second or third arc of that whole 21 issues, right? We could have seen Mystique and Destiny plotting in secret and getting to know both of them and their relationship in more detail, which I think is one of the most intriguing things about this Krakoan era, but fingers crossed that's still potentially to come in future comics. Part 1 of Mystique and Destiny's plan is to reveal Destiny's resurrection at the council meeting and rapidly put it to a vote whether one of the open council seats should be filled by Irene. The vote is left to Nightcrawler, Storm, Professor X, Magneto, Mystique, Exodus, Mr. Sinister, Emma Frost, Kate Pryde, and Sebastian Shaw. So Mystique plays get the votes, right? Bringing to mind Kendall Roy's succession ploy to oust Brian Cox in Season 1, or, every episode of The West Wing or Veep. The biggest swing for Mystique is getting Emma Frost on her side, which she does via a stolen mystery box that Emma covets, a box we've seen teased in X-Men number 21 during the Hellfire Gala. This mystery box, and Shades of Dune's pain box here, is called the Karakutaka, which Google tells me translates to black box in Turkish. My expectation here is that the box will grant Emma some sort of Deus Ex Machina to help Krakoa out of the pickle they're about to get into with Nimrod and Orcus, granting her this growing build towards the new Professor X, the new savior leader of Krakoa, after a fashion. Either way, Mystique secures the votes, and the motion to sit Destiny next to Professor X and Magneto on the council carries, meaning the Mutant Supreme Court just lost a Professor and Magneto majority. They no longer can really push forward an agenda of their own making. What's especially interesting is where Destiny and Mystique want to go next. We see elsewhere in this issue Mystique discovering a gateway to the Orcus Forge, setting the stage for a possible chance to destroy Orcus and get what she wants, the thing the Triumvirate would never have given her had she accomplished her task. Unexpectedly, or expectedly, when Moira learns Destiny's bolt back and on the council, she throws her drink at a mysterious test tube. She is irate. Moira immediately jumps to a desire to assassinate Destiny and Mystique, she absolutely hates them. This cannot be understated. It's here that we're seeing Moira's cold, calculating pragmatism at her worst. She truly has no self-awareness around her own failings, and at this point, with the life she's led, I don't think she cares. Moira is not coming across as a leader for mutant kind that we necessarily want to be following as we get, finally, after all these years post-House and Powers, more revelations about what's actually going on with her. So rather than commit a mutant murder for Moira, this leads to Professor and Magneto suggesting they bring in Emma Frost on the Moira secret as a way to cement her loyalty to them. As a result, we get our second page in as many issues with Emma replaying Professor X's role from House of X, this time learning the secrets of Moira. So rather than stand shocked in awe, though, Emma's furious that the trio have been hiding all this with Krakoa and mutant kind at stake. Moira wonders if instead of an ally, they've made an enemy, and I think the answer continues to be, somewhere in the middle, in that Emma will march to her own drum and carry forward for Krakoa, or as she puts it, for the children, not for the secretive, trio triumvirate. As a result of Emma's uncertain loyalty, the ruling trio then turn to adding Colossus to the Quiet Council, someone they feel they can trust. Except, from X-Force number 24, the most recent issue in that run, this is looking decidedly untrue. The most recent of the Ben Percy written X-Force issues confirmed that Colossus is under the control of Mikhail Rasputin, the Chronicler, and the anti-Krakoa nation of Russia. We don't know the exact endgame, or even how thoroughly X-Force and Inferno will be integrated, but it's looking like yet another way that Moira, Charlie, and Mag's best-laid plans go horribly awry. This is the story of their downfall, after all. The issue's most intriguing mysteries or builds. Number one for me is the recurrence of the Omega Sentinel, the former Karima Shapinder, with the epigraph quotes at the front of the first two issues. Issue number one said, "Someone remembers, it's why they keep coming." Issue number two, "See what I really am." Omega has an interesting moment here with Nimrod that really is making me consider what the character's role is in all of this. Remember, the Omega Sentinel's backstory is that she was a human, Karima Shapinder, and was converted into an Omega Prime Sentinel by Bastion, that complex blend of Nimrod-y stuff that he is. Kareem has also fought alongside the X-Men, particularly during the very good Mike Carey run on the title. The story of Karima joining Orchis and her role with the organization is an entirely open slate. We don't know what happened to get her to that point. But consider that Karima is a human-machine hybrid, that ultimate threat of Homo Novissima from Moira's sixth lifeline. And admittedly, I've been totally overlooking her. It's entirely possible Karima's been running the show this whole time, like a Sentinel Gene Parmesan from Arrested Development, right? There could be a huge reveal here coming in terms of Karima's involvement and role with Orchis, and really with the whole plan of what Moira is intending to do. So, okay, there are a subtle couple data pages here too in this issue, with the Krakoan network recording a private conversation between Mystique and Destiny. Now, the first page references code for the Great Tree, okay, which is an obvious reference to Krakoa, but then the second data page references the Great Machine, or MACHN for short, which I'm reading as a hint as to the techno-organic nature of Krakoa, right? We saw that tease in the first issue with Doug and Warlock and Krakoa Gathering, calling back to when we saw, that very phalanxy techno-organic spread into Krakoa way back in House of X. Now, I could be off on this. It could just be a machine used in the sense the island's connective parts all working together as one of Hickman's grand machines. But again, when you connect the dots between this and the first issue and the suggestion that plot is going to be continued, that feels meaningful. The conversation itself reveals Destiny sees nothing in the future, a hole there, and says we have to discover what it is they are hiding. This to me is the core question of Inferno, looking at why is there a hole there? What does that reflect about Moira's plan? Does that mean ascension, right? Does that mean her ultimate plan is ascension? Does it mean her ultimate plan is a cure so that she can't resurrect a lifeline again, and that puts some sort of hole in the future? That is, of course, the core question that I'm looking forward to an answer here in Inferno. So the Krakoan for the next issue reads Nimrod, The episode, or the series so far, at the midway point, it's playing out fairly predictably and a little too by the numbers for my liking at this point, but we have 80 plus pages of story left, so it's not like I'm not excited to see it play out in full. I think we're ready for some big reveals here. The fall of Professor X and Magneto seems assured, but what continues to be most interesting to me is where Moira will stand following this event. I've been somewhat surprised how thoroughly I'm on the side of Mystique and Destiny to date, and how Moira seems, just as behind and culpable as Professor X and Magneto. I kind of anticipated she'd be the one to have the master plan to keep everything aligned to the future survival of mutant kind. She's seen it all. She has too much to lose, but she kind of feels just as flawed here as these failing great men. Will that continue to be the story of Inferno, or will they turn it around? Issues 3 and 4 will tell us. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at Comic Book Herald. Thanks in particular to those of you who support the site and the endeavors over at patreon.com/Comic Book Herald. Thanks to those of you in the mysterious benefactors tier. Thank you, Jesse W., Megan Getman, Cole Weathers, Brent Bowser, Professor X3769, Richard Rentz, Adam, Chris Merkvicka, Verisimilitude, Terranort, Clyde to Clyde, Pinball Drew, Mike Solomons, Matt Mahoney, John Samander, and Joshua Bentley. Thank you all for your generous Mysterious benefactor support. Again, you can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at Comic Book Herald, anywhere on social. Look for the best comics ever and My Marvelous Year podcast for more from me. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.